100 days to commemorate the 23rd anniversary of the Rwandan genocide. White House declares a new era in its North Korea policy, but details remain unclear. And an invasive plant in Lake Victoria spurs economic growth in the area. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, a shocking discovery has been made by United Nations investigators. UN Human Rights Chief Zeid Ra'ad Al Hussein says 17 new mass grave sites were uncovered in the central Kasai region of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Investigators have also gathered reports of rapes and killings by Congolese soldiers. They say the International Criminal Court should investigate if the Congo government fails to do so. The DRC government, which regularly denies allegations of abuses by its soldiers, said it would investigate the reports once it saw the evidence. The UN says that at least 74 people, including 30 children, were reported to have been killed by soldiers in the clashes. Most of the victims were said to have been killed in their homes as soldiers went door to door looking for militia members. Not too far from there, Rwanda marked the 23rd anniversary of the start of the genocide earlier this month. But the commemoration actually goes on for 100 days. During the memorial period, the capital is under a strict curfew out of respect for those in mourning. Hamada El Rassam reports from Kigali.
Rwanda's President Paul Kagame led the flame of remembrance on April 7th to mark the anniversary of the start of the genocide. The flame burns for 100 days. An estimated 800,000 people were killed during that span in 1994. Every year, those 100 days are an official period of mourning. The government applies a strict curfew on nightclubs and stores in the capital. Public celebrations is frowned upon.
The genocide experience is a really sensitive issue. So it becomes challenging for you to go out partying, celebrating at a moment where very many people are grieving their beloved ones.
During this period, Rwandans grieve for those who were killed. Local television carries documentaries and special programming. Pascaline Karoranje was born on April 15, 1994 during the genocide. The 23-year-old has never had a birthday party. Her parents were killed in the violence when Pascaline was 4 weeks old.
Yeah, this is my mom. Some people told me like I a bit look like her. This is my dad. The rest, like I look like him so much. So a friend of mine gave it to me like a gift for my birthday. It was a good memory. I just feel good. I love it. Yeah. At least I can keep it and something good.
The streets will remain quiet until July 4th to honor the dead. However, the city's vibrant nightlife still thrives behind closed doors. Hamada El Rassam for VOA News, Kigali.
Now, with concerns mounting over North Korea's rapidly advancing nuclear and ballistic missile programs, White House officials are signaling an aggressive new posture towards Pyongyang. But it's not clear exactly what that means. Here's viewers Bill Gallo.
A show of force at the border with North Korea. With North Korean soldiers just meters away, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence delivered an in-person warning to the North that U.S. policy is changing.
The era of strategic patience is over.
It was a brief statement with a big implication that the U.S. will no longer wait as North Korean leader Kim Jong-un expands his nuclear and missile programs, on display here at a recent military parade. But U.S. President Donald Trump's next step isn't clear. Trump has suggested the U.S. could act alone against the North. To back up that threat, a U.S. aircraft carrier strike group is headed for the Korean Peninsula. Trump has also tried to persuade Chinese leader Xi Jinping to put more economic pressure on his North Korean ally. But those steps are variations of strategies already used by past administrations, raising the question, just how much will U.S. policy change under Trump? Chris Hill, a former U.S. ambassador to South Korea and lead negotiator in nuclear talks with the North, says there's no magic answer.
There's a finite number of things that one can do. And so in diplomacy, I wouldn't expect someone to, pull a rabbit out of a hat that no one expected.
Hill, who spoke via Skype, also questions Trump's strategy of unpredictability. That's a reference to Trump's insistence that he won't telegraph his next move and that all options are on the table.
Unpredictability can be very good if you're, playing football or basketball, and the other side doesn't know what you're going to try to do to score. But it can also cause a lot of problems, especially when your partners don't really know you very well and don't really know what your instincts are and don't really have a sense of how you like to do things.
At the White House, Press Secretary Sean Spicer also declared a new era of North Korea policy, but refused to go into details.
And so the president's been very clear that not taking options off the table gives us a stronger hand.
Just what Trump will do with that hand is anyone's guess. Bill Gallo, VOA News, Washington.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump has directed the National Security Council to review the international agreement on Iran's nuclear program and evaluate whether suspending sanctions is vital to the national security interests of the United States. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson revealed the review in a letter on Tuesday to House Speaker Paul Ryan. Tillerson informed Ryan that Iran is complying with its responsibilities under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which it agreed to in 2015 after negotiations with the United States, Britain, France, China, Russia, and Germany. The U.S. led an international effort that led to harsh economic sanctions on Iran, particularly limiting its ability to sell oil on the global market in an effort to force the Islamic regime to abandon its effort to develop nuclear weapons. Now, the plan of action stipulates that if either side believes the other is violating the agreement, they can launch a dispute resolution process, the final step of which is a UN Security Council vote on whether to continue lifting the sanctions. A U.S. move to reimpose sanctions could cause Iran to pull out of the deal. Now, the former Marine general now leading the U.S. Department of Homeland Security is taking on his critics, issuing a forceful defense of how his agency is dealing with threats at the border and beyond. VOA's national security correspondent Jeff Selden reports.
Tired of seeing his agents ripped by some in the media, lawmakers, and others for what he called enforcing the law, Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly made the case getting tough is the only option.
Make no mistake, we are in fact a nation under attack. We're under attack from people who hate us, hate our freedoms, hate our laws, hate our values, hate the way we simply live our lives.
Kelly told an audience at George Washington University that already the tougher approach is paying off, with apprehensions along the southwestern border down 64% compared to this time last year. Something he says is good for everyone.
Fewer people are crossing the border illegally means fewer deaths in the desert.
Still, there are other borders to worry about, he says, some vulnerable to foreign fighters who once pledged allegiance to the likes of the Islamic State terror group.
The expectation is that many of these holy warriors will survive, come back to their home countries where they will wreak murderous havoc in Europe, Asia, the Maghreb, the Caribbean, and the United States.
Kelly says already large numbers are starting to head for home. One of the biggest concerns now for Homeland Security officials is what they see as a coming together of terrorist groups and criminal organizations. Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly warning some of these smugglers have become so good and so efficient, they can smuggle just about anything, even into the U.S. Jeff Selden, VOA News, Washington.
U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order directing government agencies to review their use of the H-1B visa program, which enables U.S. companies to hire temporary foreign workers. Now, critics say the program has been used to hire cheaper labor from abroad at the expense of the American workforce. But respondents say it is a necessary measure to fill high-tech jobs that are crucial to the American economy. Here's VOA's Laditza Hoke.
Under Trump's new order, government agencies are required to review their procurement practices and ensure that exceptions to the Buy American rules are not abused.
With this order, I'm directing every single agency in our government to strictly uphold our Buy American laws, to minimize the use of waivers, and to maximize Made in America content in all federal projects.
Trump told an audience in a tool-making factory in Wisconsin that widespread abuse of the U.S. immigration system enables employers to replace American workers of all backgrounds with cheaper labor brought in from other countries.
American workers have long called for reforms to end these visa abuses, and today their calls are being answered for the first time. That includes taking the first steps to set in motion a long overdue reform of H-1B visas.
H-1B visas are designed to help employers bring in foreign workers with skills that are scarce in the United States. The intent is good, political science professor Ronil Hira told VOA.
The idea is that you're filling skills gaps. So when there are shortages of American workers, and you're going to bring in a very specialized foreign worker to fill those gaps.
It is supposed to be a temporary measure, but the program has not been used to bring only the best and most talented workers, says Hira.
It's become a way for employers to bring in cheaper indentured workers as opposed to filling those skills gaps. And so as a result, the program is oversubscribed and it's actually undercutting Americans. So in this case, Trump is absolutely right.
Hira says a stricter enforcement of the rules could free up a number of these temporary visas for companies that really need specialists with rare skills. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
On to North Africa now. Archaeologists in Egypt have made a major discovery of statues, coffins, and several mummies in a 3,500-year-old tomb. Now, the tomb is on the west bank of the Nile near Luxor, not far from the Valley of the Kings. It was believed to have been built between 1500 and 1000 BC, likely for a judge. According to the Antiquities Ministry, the tomb is made up of a courtyard that leads to 2 halls. One hallway had 4 colorful coffins, while the other had 6. The Associated Press reports that the head of the dig says another area contains statues depicting royalty from previous ruling dynasties. More discoveries, including more mummies, are expected. Well, now we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Coming up, a Chinese company wants to make Djibouti the industrial zone of East Africa. Stay with us.
I'm Milar Sega. I'm the host of VOA's The Correspondents, a roundup of the world's top stories with analysis from our dedicated reporters. It's really a conversation the same way that you would bring a friend to your home and ask them what's going on. And our correspondents will do that and answer those questions through their own eyes.
That appears a false choice in more ways than one.
We can't actually put you there, but we can come pretty close. In 30 minutes, we'll show you the world.
Wherever you are, Voice of America is on air, reaching more than 130 million weekly, worldwide, in more than 40 languages. Online, social media, and breaking news from around the world. On the go, dozens of new features on popular platforms with new apps and trending topics. Voice of America, on air, online, on the go.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
Welcome back. In Wednesday's business report, the China Merchants Group has announced it wants to make Djibouti the shekel of East Africa. Now, reporting from New York with more details on Chinese investment in East Africa is Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Vincent. So African Business reported that China Merchants Group, or what we call CMG, wants to turn the port of Djibouti into a big hub port, similar to the Shekou terminal in Shenzhen, China. Now, the port of Shenzhen, which includes the Shekou terminal, it's the third biggest container port in the world. The government seems to be basing its economic strategy on its port capacity and the free trade zone, taking advantage of its location at the entrance to the Red Sea on the shipping lines between Asia and Europe. So here's the catch, though. It could be argued that while Djibouti can function as a transshipment hub, it only has a population of 950,000 people, so it seems unlikely that the scale of its ambition can be achieved without immigration, although the government denies this.
Now, someone looking at the size, the population may say, well, does it really make strategic sense to invest that amount of money in a port of Djibouti?
You know, I think it does. Recall, China has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Ethiopia. The bulk of recent investment is being made in the textile and apparel sector, which is helping Ethiopia develop itself as a manufacturing hub for the global textile market. So Chinese companies are moving closer to the raw material base and also using Africa as a gateway to emerging markets on the continent and to the European market. The port of Djibouti has those shipping lanes to Asia and Europe, so it's geographically well positioned, and this has also been aided by the completion of the $4 billion electrified railway from the port to Addis Ababa last year.
And so this is not so much just about Djibouti. You know, at this point, you really look in amazement at Ethiopia as a country that has risen literally out of the ashes to where it is today through foreign investment, right?
Oh, yeah, agreed. It's a model story for the most part. Ethiopia is among the fastest growing in the world and has registered a double-digit growth rate for the last 10 years. The relative political and social stability, you have rapid economic growth, favorable climate and fertile soils, abundant labor force, competitive incentive packages, and access to wide markets are some of the reasons that are contributing to the growth of foreign direct investment. As with any developing nation, gaining and maintaining trust of institutional investors is going to be key for growth going forward.
Hoping for the best, and we know it has been going through some instability. Thank you very much, Jill, as always. That's
Thank you.
Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino reporting from New York. Now, beside Iraq and Syria, the largest presence of the so-called Islamic State and its affiliates is found on the African soil. That's Libya, the Sahel region, and Nigeria. Then there are also Al-Qaeda-linked groups in North Africa and Al-Shabaab in Somalia. For some insight into the security challenges Africa faces and how the U.S. can help, I spoke with J. Peter Pham, Vice President and Director, Africa Center, Atlantic Council.
We certainly have a challenge from Islamist terrorism in Africa. But beyond that, we also have significant security challenges within. South Sudan is a failed state. It's one that where a country that began just a few years ago with all the hope and promise in the world is now on the verge of a genocide, and certainly already has surpassed the bar of ethnic cleansing, et cetera. That, you know, how we bring that back from the brink. The so-called Democratic Republic of the Congo, where we have a president who has overstayed the terms of the Constitution, the black letter terms, and we forget at our own peril that the last time that country tipped into civil war, more than 5 million people died as a result. Do we want another African world war in the heart of the continent? So there are a number of security challenges. How can the U.S. help? First and foremost, by helping willing African partners stand up their own defenses, their own security, and then encouraging good governance throughout the continent, helping those who are willing to help themselves, helping regional groups that are willing to stand up in their region. We had a success recently with the ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, finally managing to persuade one of the longtime rulers to depart after he lost the election, Yahya Jammeh in the Gambia. Good riddance. Could it have been done faster, whatever. You know, that's a little bit of carping. It was done, and without great violence. And so that's a success.
And actually, many Africans are looking at the kind of action taken by ECOWAS as something that perhaps could be replicated across the continent. But then you know that we don't have many regional powerful militaries, say in East Africa or Southern Africa, and that's why they look to the U.S. to say, can the U.S. help the regional bodies or even the African Union really to kind of achieve what ECOWAS has achieved in the Gambia?
I think that's an aspiration to work towards, but one that still has to be, we can't wait for that day to come. But until that day comes, I think the U.S. has to work with bilateral partners as it finds them there and help them build up their capacity. Yes, the aspiration is an African Union-wide capacity, or at least a regional capacity. But outside ECOWAS in the West, we actually don't have that capacity in other regions. If you look at the other regional economic communities, the Arab Maghreb Union is moribund, if not defunct. The IGAD has its issues, although the East Africa community in the East has ECAS in the center of the continent is hamstrung by the issues around Democratic Republic of Congo and neighboring states. And of course, SADC in the South has its own issues. So it's going to take time. Until time is ready, we have to work on a bilateral basis.
And just going back a little bit to the issue of ISIS in relation also to their support of the other terrorist groups on the continent like Al-Shabaab and of course the one in West Africa, Boko Haram. Some have wondered whether the message from President Trump would be understood to mean that there's hope now for those regions, because he said ISIS and those kind of terrorists are going to be eliminated. Is there something that can change to ensure that these groups can be decimated from the continent of Africa, hopefully, and of course the rest of the world, that is different than what has been happening?
You know, it was very interesting. In 2011, I testified at the very first congressional hearing on Boko Haram. At that time, my view, which was that we're facing a major Islamist terrorist network that had ties to the international jihadism, was the distinctly minority view. It was rather telling that on the day before the Obama administration left office, several of the communications from Abu Bakr Shakal, then leader of Boko Haram, to actually Ayman al-Zawahiri standing in for Osama bin Laden, were declassified. And so actually proving the point I made half a decade ago, that there were links, there was outreach, rather than the situation being ignored. So I think there's going to be greater sensibility and sensitivity to this challenge, and those who are willing partners in what is, as President Trump said, civilization's fight against this terror will hopefully get the aid that they need and deserve.
That's J. Peter Pham. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, an invasive plant in Lake Victoria spurs economic growth in the area. We'll be right back.
How much funding has been received and how much is still? What are the UN in this country?
An estimated 7.5 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance.
Well, an innovator at Kenya's Lake Victoria has turned an invasion of water hyacinth into a business opportunity, making paper from the weed that he sells in local shops. The initiative is creating jobs and supporting environmental sustainability. Lenny Ruvaga has more from Kisumu.
Michael Otieno began making paper from water hyacinth 10 years ago. The flowering weed is a nuisance to fishermen. It depletes fish stocks, affecting thousands of livelihoods. Known as Paperman by locals, Otieno has perfected his daily routine. Every morning, he goes into Lake Victoria to search for raw material. Once the hyacinth is harvested, it is cut into small pieces before being boiled to soften it. Otieno started the Takawiri initiative to provide income and jobs for locals. According to the World Bank, Lake Victoria supports around 40 million people in East Africa, with nearly half of those residents living on less than $1.25 a day. Otieno now employs up to 30 people, though the business has its challenges.
One is it's a technology. The machines we are using are locally fabricated. And two, it's a capital-intense project. Therefore, it needs a lot of resources.
Edward Orato runs a courier shop in Kisumu City on the banks of Lake Victoria. Since he started using the hyacinth paper, he hasn't looked back.
I like the paper since it's not expensive. It's also easily available. As an artist, I think it has a unique texture. The fibers give my paintings an edge.
Takawiri initiative got a startup $60,000 grant from a Kenyan government agency tasked with environmental research and sustainability promotion. Joshua Twanampiu is a top official with the National Environment Trust Fund.
Definitely we understand the scarcity of finance or the inability of finance to trickle down to the people who really need it. And that is why Net Fund is there, to ensure that even though there is a lot of funding that is there for climate change, it must trickle down to the grassroots, to the people who really need it.
For Otieno and his staff, the water hyacinth is proving to be a blessing in disguise. Lenny Ruvaga for VOA News, Kisumu, Kenya.
Brilliant idea. And that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. An alley is a narrow path between or behind buildings.
Up one's alley.
Does this expression have to do with city streets?
Jonathan, do you have any friends who teach singing?
Hello. I am a singer.
You are? Oh, awesome. Do you